Hello and welcome to the Fit to Transform podcast, where you learn how to train and diet effectively and, most importantly, how to maintain those results for life, once and for all. I'm Nikias Tomasiello, a transgender training and nutrition coach working online with anyone who's ready for a true lifestyle transformation, anywhere they may be in the world. As a friendly reminder, any and all information provided is for educational purposes only. You should consult with your doctor before implementing any changes to your diet and exercise program. With that disclaimer out of the way, thank you for being here. Now grab yourself a cup of tea or pre-workouts and enjoy. Yo, dear listeners, hello and welcome back to the podcast. Today I have another interview with a brand new guest. And I think that I'm going to keep the same title that I have right now in mind for this podcast. So, dear listeners, you're probably looking at the title, which is The Mindset, Actions and Challenges of High Achievers, which gives you an insight into the kind of person I'm interviewing today. Coach Natalie Lewis. Welcome to the podcast, Natalie.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
And the very first question, Natalie, that I ask all of my guests when they are new is, who are you, what do you do, and why are you so awesome at it?
I love it. Okay. Well, first and foremost, I am a fitness enthusiast, bodybuilding obsessed, high achieving, fun loving, physique nerd, I would say. And then what I do, so I do like that you made a distinction there between who are you and what do you do. I am a physique coach. So I coach lots of high achievers who basically want to look like they lift. That's the best way I can always sum it up. People come to me who are frustrated because they don't feel like their effort is rewarded by their actions. So like, what are they missing? What's the missing piece here? Why don't I look like I lift? And so we do that through training and nutrition, synergistically. And I do work for Elevated Coaching Systems. So I'm part of a very small coaching team. There are three of us: Jeremiah Bear, who is the owner of the company, as well as Andrea Rogers and myself. I love my team so much. I love my clients. I am an absolute nerd for this stuff. And more than anything, I love the transformation process, because anyone who's undergone a transformation, either themselves or coached it, ideally both if you're coaching, knows that it is never just about the external. It even if it starts that way, it never ends up that way. And it is one of my absolute favorite things in this life to help people with their transformation and basically level up every area of their life.
Natalie, I love your introduction because it resonates with me so much. I could have written that introduction for myself. And
You did. I was reading your notes. I'm just kidding.
So you just copied me straight up. No,
Yeah.
We're just joking, dear listeners. This is all Natalie. And so I feel like we are kindred spirits in that way. And I'm also really passionate about the transformation process and what it can do for somebody, not just in terms of their visual appearance, which is already really fascinating to me anyway, but also, as you said, in terms of what it can do for them to propel them in all other areas of life. The kind of confidence you can build through fitness really shines through in the rest of our lives as well. And dear listeners, as Natalie was introducing herself, you might have recognized Elevated Coaching Systems and Jeremiah Bear, because I had Jeremiah on the podcast a while ago in episode 90. And that episode is titled How to Stop Chronic Dieting and Start Transforming Your Physique and Health. So if you want to listen to Jeremiah talk about that topic, tune into that episode 90. As for this episode instead, we're going to focus on something a little bit different. And I want to start, Natalie, with your story. I got the inspiration for the questions I'm going to ask you from a couple of podcasts that you and Jeremiah and the rest of the team at Elevated Coaching Systems, so basically only Andrea, because it's three of you. I was like, the rest of the team. No, three people. So
we're small but mighty.
Exactly.
But not small in size. I want to be very clear.
Well, I'm 5 foot nothing, and I'm an army of one in terms of my business. So I am small but mighty for sure. And in any case, you three recorded two podcasts, and one of them was about your contest prep. The second one was more generally about reverse dieting, but you also touched on your own reverse dieting journey. And in the first podcast about your first ever contest prep, one thing you said was that you had been managing your nutrition and your training for, you said, many years prior to deciding to prep for a bodybuilding show. And I wanted to ask you when exactly and how did you get into first non-competitive bodybuilding, training and nutrition?
I'd say that conversation goes back probably my entire life. I feel like this is almost a bit of an origin story. I will try to make it succinct because I'm getting up there in terms of age. But, I was someone who was never happy with my appearance, how I looked or felt growing up. It was always a mystery to me. My older sister was always long and lean, as they say. Like I was an NFL and an NBA cheerleader. Could slam Big Macs and regular Coca-Cola and had a six pack and never had to think about it. That was certainly not the case for me. Although I was never, I would say, I was never obese or like, massively overweight, but I was never comfortable in my body. I didn't like the way I looked. Definitely a product of diet culture. And anything that brought me into fitness or nutrition was because of that. So I'd love to sit here and say, oh, I just wanted to learn about nutrition or, I just wanted to learn about fitness. That really wasn't the case. I really just hated how I looked and felt. And when I was living abroad, which was over in Hong Kong many moons ago, um, it was a very like hard and fast lifestyle. I was also a professional musician. It was a classical musician, but make no mistake, classical musicians know how to party. Especially you put us in Hong Kong, and like the party never stops. So it occurred to me at some point that I was moving in the opposite direction from, well, I really don't like how I look and feel now. I better do something about this. And that brought me to CrossFit because I saw the female CrossFitters and, they were strong and jacked. And that resonated with me more than the like 90s archetype of Kate Moss, the quote heroin chic sort of thing. Like I never actually really wanted to be skinny. Like I saw those CrossFit women and I was like, this is awesome. Like they look strong, badass. And of course, in retrospect, I now know it wasn't necessarily just their aesthetic. It was also like the confidence that they portrayed and like the strength that they portrayed and everything about that. So naturally, like so many of my ladies started CrossFit. It's like, oh, because I'm gonna look like that. And like so many of my ladies, fast forward a few years, like I still don't look like that. I don't get it. I'm pretty strong, but so nutrition was always that missing piece. And when I was over in Hong Kong, would have been in like around 2013, maybe 2012 or so. I hired my first nutrition coach, and that was actually Nick Shaw, who's the CEO of RP Strength.
Oh yeah,
Um,
I know Nick.
yeah, so I mean, like we're talking going back. They were one of the first like online transformation kind of businesses. And that really kind of kickstarted my interest in nutrition because I saw success for the first time. And I was like, oh, I guess this is it. Um, and so that was really a turning point for me in terms of my relationship with nutrition and my knowledge and understanding of how important that was. But still, the dots were not connecting. It was very much a like I'm either on this plan or I'm off this plan kind of thing. Because back then, this was before RP Strength had like their app. And so they were doing things via you could hire an individual coach or they were using templates. So it was one of those things where if I just do what my coach says, I will get the results. But then there was no gray area. What about when I don't do what my coach says or plans change or like I don't, so it showed me the power of nutrition, but I was missing an awful lot. And through the years, I cycled through many nutrition coaches, all of which were great in their own way and appropriate for me at that point in time. Um, and I would say like the next big turning point, especially with regards to training, was the COVID lockdowns of 2020. By this point, I was really into it, and I was also like I'd been coaching CrossFit for years, like total believer there, drinking the Kool Aid. Knew a lot more about nutrition, had made a lot of really great progress with my physique. Like I finally kind of got it. Like all of those missing pieces kind of clicked. And with the lockdown, I was living in Philadelphia and cities got hit really hard. And so like gyms were closed. Like our gyms were closed a lot longer than like those in the suburbs, and those areas. And so I was taking a lot of what I had learned, from my that first gym in Hong Kong. It was a strength and conditioning facility, first and foremost, who also did CrossFit, but they were really ahead of their time, I gotta say, and they were applying a lot of like S&C principles like to their CrossFit programming, and I learned an awful lot from them. And so I did my own programming through COVID with like a pair of like 35-pound dumbbells and a 16 kg kettlebell, and I my apartment was in front of a playground, so I had a set of monkey bars, so I was doing like a lot of pull-ups, and I like spreadsheets of programming for myself. And it was really just like I didn't really know it at the time, but it was progressive overload. Like is how I was kind of progressing myself through this. Yeah, turns out it works, right? And the funny thing is without literal CrossFit, without a barbell, certainly without any kind of fancy machines, I saw more change in my physique that summer than ever before. And it was this synergistic combination of training and nutrition, because again I managed my nutrition pretty well at that point. And during those COVID lockdowns, I mean, most people went in one of two directions, right? They either ran toward managing nutrition and dialing in, or the other direction, which was F it, right? Well, I ran in the direction of like I'm gonna manage this. And so by the end of those lockdowns, I was like, "Oh, wow, well, that's interesting." And then when, COVID, like when the gyms reopened, I went back to CrossFit, and like I was actually so much better at it. Like all of a sudden I was like so much stronger. And I looked the part, and like that was super cool. Um and that's when I really was like, I'm gonna like I want to learn. I want to know everything about this at this point. Like, I finally started to find that peace with myself of like being at peace with my body. Even if at any given moment, I wasn't maybe like in the best shape of my life, because our bodies move through seasons, right? I knew how to get there. Like, I knew I could be. And at that point, I had been exposed to the potential, or like the potentiation of like when you take these things really seriously and you lock in. And that was really powerful and transformative for me. And when I finally got to that point and kind of like broke free, I was like, I want to help other people find this. I always like to say I was that person who, when I went out to eat, felt like I could never partake in the bread basket. Like I could never look at like the sandwich portion of the menu. And that was like a part of my identity. It was like, oh, I just can't, like I just can't. Like you can, but I can't. And that was just what I told myself, like for such a long time. And then when everything clicked and I really understood, again, it was just so liberating. And I was just like, I know so many people that live like this. And I know firsthand how miserable that was. And so I want to do whatever I can to help other people find this kind of freedom. And with that comes just like empowerment. And like I said, that this isn't to say that like we all need to walk around 24/7, 365, like jacked, like our most jacked and lean ever. That's not what this is about. But like knowing how to, and knowing that you could if you really wanted to, is pretty empowering.
I agree. And thank you for sharing so much of your story so honestly. I think it's such a powerful story, for lack of a different synonym, which I can't think of right now. And it resonates with my own background, and I believe a lot of the listeners. It's one of the reasons why I am passionate about helping my clients, because I took what you described in terms of diet culture and took it to an extreme, and I developed anorexia nervosa for many years. So I completely understand where you are coming from, where you're saying that you didn't feel like you could be one of those people who partake in the bread basket. I would cry if I were offered the bread basket at a point in my life. So I totally get that. What also is really interesting is that it sounds like you were working really hard your entire life. Something you didn't mention, but that I found snooping around on your Instagram, is that before CrossFit, you were also involved in dance and then gymnastics. And what you shared on the podcast with Jeremiah is that the way that you train yourself and practice to become a classical musician was very, very intense. So it sounds like you have always put in a lot of work towards the goals that you had. But with fitness, until you found nutrition first and then understood the power of hypertrophy specific training as opposed to CrossFit, which doesn't achieve the same goal when it comes to physique transformation, you simply didn't know where to channel those efforts. You were working hard, but not in the right direction. And when you found that direction, that's what sounds like motivated you to become really locked in within this non competitive at this point bodybuilding lifestyle. So I'm wondering, at that point, was it only the outcome? Was it the fact that you could see, I have all this freedom around food now, this peace with my body that I could not feel before? Well, only. I say only as if it's a small thing. It's the whole thing, isn't it? But my question is, I guess I should actually bring it back to the start. My brain sometimes works faster than my mouth, or rather, the other way around. So now my brain is catching up. I'm going to back up, and the question starts here. You mentioned that throughout your bodybuilding prep, which is your latest accomplishment when it pertains to fitness, you were your life was really boring. You defined it. You said something along the lines of, I was doing the same thing every day, but with a different outfit. So I'm wondering if when you were working so hard, but you didn't have the right direction, were you also able to be this boringly consistent? And if that's the case, where did that come from at that point where you didn't have the results that you wanted and you were still being consistent? Or did you start being that unfailingly and boringly, so to speak, consistent after you started getting results?
I feel like I really have to try not to be long-winded, but it's like I'm like, ooh, what direction do I want to go in here? So, like you mentioned, my background is as a professional classical musician. So, for listeners that maybe don't know or like have an appreciation for like that career field, it's very competitive. Like you are competing against a lot of people to win an audition for like one job. So you'll like fly across the world to play 5 minutes behind a screen blind for them to say thank you very much, and then you fly back home, you didn't get the job, you know? And like even if you were runner up, it's like you don't get anything for that. So it's I literally, it's funny when I talk about this career because I always say like when you win a job, and that's the way you talk about it, you win a job. It's super competitive. So think like Juilliard, for example. Like these are the people that we're talking about. So I was someone who would, this is all I wanted to do was play in a professional orchestra since I was in like seventh grade, so middle school. So even back then, like I would lock myself in a practice room for hours. I mean, what middle schooler does that? Like honestly, what high schooler does that? I went to a music conservatory for college and for grad school. Like I've been one track minded for a really long time. I've had a lot of conversations on our podcast with Jeremiah about, mentoring younger coaches. And we're a big fan of like, hey, coaches need coaches. And something I always say is the fastest point from fastest way from point A to point B is to find someone who's doing what you want to do and pay them to tell you how they got there. So like hire a coach, hire a teacher, hire a mentor. And this is always something that worked for me with music. Like I always had a private teacher, or like we would call it a private teacher, but a coach, right? Always. Since I was in 5th grade, I had a music teacher and like cycled through various ones, same thing with like coaches. And if we're kind of speaking in parallels to like my fitness and nutrition journey, what was always missing was the right information. Like I didn't have the right guidance. And so, yeah, I was like working really hard at the wrong things. It was totally misapplied and mischanneled. So that was kind of what clicked was, oh, I just needed the right information. And then I already knew how to work hard and apply myself. So then I just had to throw myself into that. I tend to be a very obsessive person. I think I used to feel a little like ick about that, like, "Ugh, like, do I really want to describe myself?" Because I feel like in this day and age, like everyone's chasing balance, and everyone loves to like call everyone else disordered, and like all of that jargon gets thrown around. But like I think we'll probably get into. I really think it's like it's not what you do; it's the intent with which you do it. Um, and I just always go hard. It's like, and I don't actually want to change that about myself. I love that about myself. Like that's what's gotten me wherever I've been in this life. It's, I think we'll get into a little bit later. That's not to say that it doesn't come with some, maybe some potential downsides, but it's always been just very productive for me, and I'm someone who really loves to see like a big project come together. Like when you work on a big project in school and you put a lot into it and there are like a lot of little moving parts, and then months down the road you get to like zoom out and look at this finished product and be like, I did that. Like cool. That's so cool. That worked out. It came together. And the music process is very similar, right? Like when you win that audition, it's like I finally did it. Like these years of pursuing this, like, and I did that. And I think the audience probably sees exactly where I'm going with this, right? In that it's never about the finished result. And the result is really cool because of course you have like something to show for it, but it's really much more in who you become along the way and the skills and the mindset that you cultivate along the way. I learned that with music, but it was always much harder for me on the nutrition front, like with the consistency. And a lot of that was just, the mindset with which I pursued it too. Like I was living a hard and fast lifestyle in Hong Kong, and I was unhappy in some other aspects of my life. And I really felt myself like chasing highs. In that it was always about like the next all you can eat hotel brunch, on the weekends with my friends. It was always like when I could go out with my friends, it was the next like exotic Asian trip that I could take. And I was just living this like high to high. And at some point, when I was thinking about moving back to the States, I was just like, what if I pursued riding the midline? What if I wasn't always like chasing the next high, so to speak? Um, I also want to be very clear, like, I actually am not like I wasn't that big of a partier. Like, I feel like I'm kind of painting myself out to be like it wasn't anything wild or too crazy. But I was just like, I know that this lifestyle is like I'm still not ultimately happy with how I look and feel. And I know enough now to know that if I keep pursuing this lifestyle, I'm never going to be happy with how I look and feel. So then what is the lifestyle that I need to chase? And that got me thinking like I need to chase the midline. Like I need to stop living from peak to peak. Because what is that really? It's escapism, right? Like we're in some way trying to escape like our present reality or something that we don't like. And I was like, but what if I had a life I actually didn't want to escape from? Or like, something like maybe escaping the fact that I wasn't at peace, like in my body with myself, wasn't confident. And ultimately, that is where I've arrived in my lifestyle. So, like non-competitive bodybuilding, I found that. And I reached a point in my like other careers, like post music, where I just kept moving closer and closer toward a nutrition and fitness career. Because in my mind, I was like, this is so important to me. How can I set my life up to live the lifestyle I want to live? And I realized that is such a luxury that, a lot of people who, have families and children and, a lot of extenuating circumstances, not everyone can like make that decision to like walk away from, a career or something like that. Or so I don't mean to sit here and sound flippant, like we take those decisions lightly, but I was in a position to do so. And I was like, I want to set my life up to where I don't have to miss training sessions, to where I can cook my food at home, to where I can eat the food that I want, to where it's not going to be weird or disordered. And I can live the way I want to live in a genuine and authentic way. Um, and that really is what I started pursuing, and that's how I ended up here. So before I got into actual competitive bodybuilding, I was living like a bodybuilder. I like rarely missed a training session. I was like training really hard, always managing my nutrition. And at this point, I had gotten so many quote reps in that I knew what consistency could do.
And what made you decide then to prep for a bodybuilding show and become a competitor?
I always like to say that there are like levels and layers to this thing. So, someone who's just starting out on their nutrition journey, I wouldn't necessarily say, yeah, jump into a contest prep. You got it. I,
Tomorrow.
yeah. And, the thing is, a lot of people do that. Um, but it's funny because I did a photo shoot prep about 3 years ago when Jeremiah was coaching me. Um, because I was already like I was in a fat loss phase and it was I already had a good amount of muscle and I was already like super consistent, like literally not a day hit that I did not hit my macros. And Jeremiah will like attest to this. And so then it became this conversation of like, well, hey, have you ever considered doing a photo shoot? And I was like, I had already started my nutrition business, so I did like a kind of a funsy photo shoot like a couple years prior, but nothing like this where I was like really like locked in and I was like, no, I never really considered it, but like this makes sense. I'll get some good marketing material, like it'll push me. And I love the like this is easy for me. Like I'm not struggling to like hit this plan. So sure, why not? And I did this photo shoot and I hated it. I like hated it. I loved the process. So again, you don't have to tell me to hit my macros, hit my training. Like that was no problem. But when I started to get time for the shoot, I was like really dreading it. I was like this is this thing that I like kind of have to do, and like I don't really want to do it, but like, okay, like
Why
you know.
didn't you want to do it at that point?
I mean, I'm sure it was like fear because it was an uncomfortable, awkward situation. You're gonna just hang out there in front of the camera and put your body on display, um, and it's I know I mentioned this on our podcast, but like I was very similar with my career in music. Like I loved the lifestyle and the culture and the rehearsals, and I love music and being a part of it. But I never really loved the concerts, the performances, and like even pieces of music where I would have like a huge solo. I always like just wanted to get it over with. I was like, ugh, like I just like I got to get this thing out of the way so I can just be on to the next thing. And that's really how it felt with the photo shoot. Like I just like got to tick this box and get this thing out of the way. So we get to the photo shoot and it like I didn't like the photos that I got out of it. I don't even have them because the photographer ended up getting rid of them because I because I couldn't make up my mind. I was like, I hate all of them. Oh, and I felt so awkward and like not at home in my body, which is a feeling that I've had before. And I felt like I did not know how to properly express this physique that I had worked so hard for. And like you mentioned, I have a dance gymnastics background, music background. So like being on stage I'm not a shy person, but there's something about a photo shoot where like you don't get to move. You don't get to like channel that energy. You just have to like statically like stand there. Excuse me, stand there doing something. And like I was so unhappy with the photos. Like I felt like my eyes looked crossed and like and I I was like this like everything I worked for here like does not really come through. And it was just such an icky feeling experience. And at that time, you know, I was going to a bodybuilding gym, and everyone at my gym thought I was in contest prep. And they're like, "Oh, when's your show?" And I had never really thought about competing. And when someone says something like that to you, like, "Oh, you should consider XYZ," like, yeah, naturally you start thinking about it, you know? And I was like, "Oh, I never really like looked into it." And they're like, "Well, you should. Like, you're practically there. Like, you have a lot of muscle. Why don't you?" Um, and so that kind of got the wheels turning a little bit. And then after that photo shoot experience, I wanted redemption so bad. You know, I was like, I need to correct this chapter of my life. Like, I need a redo. And one of my biggest kind of complaints was that I didn't feel like I knew how to properly express the physique that I had. And I was like, well, that is what bodybuilding is, isn't it? Like with the posing and the presentation. It's like, you know, yeah, you've got to have muscle, you've got to be conditioned and be lean enough, but you also have to be able to present the package. And I am someone, and this I think ties in really well to like what we're really talking about here in terms of like these type A hard charging, like borderline obsessive people. Um, you know, I that can be perceived as a very masculine energy. And it is one that society rewards because think about it. Like when you apply that kind of energy to things, you get things for it. Like if I like just like drive like as hard as possible towards this, I'm often met with a favorable outcome. So it's like this positive feedback loop of like, I need to keep behaving this way. And in that process, sometimes I felt like I kind of would like lose my femininity a little bit, like my creativity, my flow, my, you know, the creator kind of nature side of things. It's very easy for me to lose that. And what I really liked about the sport of bodybuilding, specifically the figure division, which is my division, is it's one of the bigger female divisions in terms of muscularity, but there is such a softness and femininity to it. The poses are very rigid. So it's like we have four poses, like front, side, back, other side, like that's it. And they're static. So like we don't have this like flowy like you know display that like the bikini athletes have and everything, but it's just like for me you get to look like an action figure and that's cool. And it's this like really cool blend of like the masculine and the feminine, you know, this like hard strength, but then also like how can you bring your femininity to this? And that was really intriguing to me. That was like the other big challenge for me because like I know I can train my ass off. Like I know I can like eat the food, but can I present this in the way that I want to?
That is so interesting. Bodybuilding is my second biggest passion. I always say that after writing. Writing came first, bodybuilding came later. I've not competed and I don't know if I will, but I always find it so interesting to hear other people's stories when they are passionate about bodybuilding and understand what drives them towards the sport, because obviously I know what drives me. And it's interesting how there can be so many different ways that somebody interprets bodybuilding and becomes passionate, and reasons why you can become passionate about it. So thank you for sharing that. Now, speaking of the contest prep itself, you don't know this, Natalie, but before this podcast comes out, there will be one episode where I'm interviewing Coach Steve Hall from Revive Stronger.
Oh
We did at this point an interview about first time competitors. So we spent quite a bit of time discussing the ins and outs of contest prep. So you don't have to go into that amount of generic detail. We can stick with what exactly you did. Because my next question is, there are many ways to approach a contest prep in terms of the cardio that you do, the training that you do, whether you have a flexible approach to nutrition whereby you get given macros and calories, or whether you prefer to utilize a meal plan. So, to give my listeners an insight into the degree of commitment to the plan that you demonstrated throughout your contest prep, what is it that your contest prep looked like?
Um, I am someone who, if I have the right guidance, so coach, mentor, teacher, whatever you want to call this person, if I trust that person, if I've and I have, like if I've hired the person, I have placed my trust in my case, him, my coach, Dom Kuza. So I trust Dom implicitly. He is also our team's mentor. So like I get to see him work from that side as well. So he has receipts. He has a track record of success. So I've seen him work behind the scenes because he's our mentor. So I had no reason to doubt that Dom could get me where I wanted to go. And so I was like, I'm going to do exactly what Dom tells me to do. That's it. That's all I have to do. And I think a lot of people get really lost in the like details of like, oh, I have to do like all these little things. But in my mind, it was just so simple. It was like, I literally just have to do this plan. Like I think a lot of people break it down into this like, I have to do this one thing and then I have to do this other thing. And I was like, okay, all I have to do is like eat the food and like do the training. That's it. That's it. Put the blinders on and go. And so there was no balance. It was just that was the only choice for me. Because I wanted the best possible outcome. Like, what's the point of doing something quote extreme, like a contest prep, if you're not going to do it extremely well? It's not. I suppose someone could make a case for it, but that just doesn't resonate with me at all. It was never like I want to win an overall and I just want to win. I mean, winning feels great. And like I would love to win and I did and like that was fun. But it was just like I'm such a nerd for this stuff and I want to know what happens if I just like do everything I'm told. And I knew that what was going to be really challenging was the stepping on stage part, the presentation, for all the reasons that I spoke about earlier. I knew that was going to be the uncomfortable thing. Like, it's not uncomfortable for me to hit my macros or a meal plan or hit my training. Been doing that for years. That's not uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable, like, get on stage and present what you've got and, like, pose in front of people, like, half naked and not feel silly about it. Um, but I knew that one thing that would help my confidence was stepping on stage knowing I literally did everything that was asked of me. It would be the worst feeling in the world to, like, step on stage and, maybe things don't go well, because let's be honest, sometimes when you really prepare well, sometimes it still doesn't go well for whatever reason. But how crappy would that feel to, like, have things not go well and then have to sit there and be like, I wonder what would have happened if I didn't miss that cardio. Or like, I wonder what would have happened if I like, hadn't like cheated on my meal plan or something like that. That was just a feeling that I had enough forward thinking to know that was not it for me.
That makes sense. So, in your mind, you were considering the short term reward of, for example, taking a break and not doing your cardio, or eating something at a restaurant that was not on your meal plan.
Mhm.
And you decided that that short term reward wasn't worth it if you thought about the long term reward of getting on stage and whatever the outcome, knowing that you had done everything that was under your control to get to that outcome.
Mhm. Like, I wonder how many people have ever had the experience of like going all in on something and, really being able to say, like, I did everything in my power. It's like, it's a really cool feeling. Like, I did that. And, like we would coach our clients, you take it day by day, of course. And so I like to say, my goal was to go to bed proud every single night. Like every night I went to bed and I'm like, I did what I was supposed to do today. And that's not to, some days were harder than others for sure. But then you stack all those days on top of one another. You get to the end of your prep when you step on stage, you can like confidently step on that stage knowing like this is it, like I did everything I was meant to do. Like I left no crumb basically.
Not only that, but also when you are that consistent, you see results a lot faster. And
For
what
sure.
I think a lot of people miss when they're wondering, why can't I be motivated? In my view, they are looking for motivation to take action, when it's by taking action that you get motivated, because action creates results, and it's the result that you get that drives you.
I
So,
think
in my
it
view,
takes a lot of faith too, though, because there's that period of time where like you're not seeing results. So like it really just does take a lot of faith, which is why I said like, hey, hire someone that you trust. Ultimately, like you just got to trust in the plan, and you just got to start chipping away, and like you got to. I always like to say assume positive intent. Like you have to assume it's going to work out in your favor, because there will be a very long period of time where nothing is happening, or it feels like nothing is happening. And you like that's the point where you're being tested.
yeah, absolutely. Actually, it's so interesting you mentioned that. I was talking about this exact topic with my partner earlier today. It's so true. As I say, results do drive motivation, but you have to work long enough to start seeing those results. And it's not immediate. I said earlier, if you're consistent, you'll see them faster. That doesn't mean they're going to happen overnight. So, as you say, there is a relatively long period of time where you're working hard, but you don't know to what end. And I agree with you, you have to take the plunge. And the way I word it is, I am a very optimistic person, and I want to have faith that there is going to be a positive outcome. So essentially, exactly what you said as well, because otherwise, because I realize that that's where a lot of my confidence comes from. I've always been told I'm a very confident person, and I've realized for myself that it is because I have faith that the plan that I am setting into motion and working so hard for is going to work out. And I agree with you. If you're not in a position where you are a coach yourself and you have that kind of confidence in your own skills, hiring somebody else gives you secondhand confidence, so to speak, because a good coach will make sure to convey to you that they do believe that their plan will work for you. And that's what's going to propel you in those initial days when you're working hard, but not necessarily seeing the results of your efforts just yet.
Yeah, I always like to take the attitude that like, listen, if I'm doing my part, so if I'm doing what my coach is asking me to do and I'm not getting the right result, it's not working, that's his problem. That's on him. Like I completely outsource this. I think, I'm sure you see this with your clients as well, but the clients that are like really like owning this and like white knuckling it and like, oh my gosh, like what if it doesn't work? I know you've seen firsthand like where the mind goes, the body will follow. So we always say like physiology follows psychology. And like I wish I had the science for like why that's true. I wish I could say like, well, you see, because the neurons are firing this way or something like that. But it's really true though. Like if you are someone who is just second guessing every step of the way, you're just not going to make as much progress. And that's a really hard thing to do. Especially for us control freaks. Um, but you got to make sure you're controlling what you can control, and it's like I can't control the outcome. I can control the input. So like I said, I control my actions. So whether or not I'm doing as my coach prescribes, the quality of the work that I put in, so I'm not like half-assing it, but I'm pursuing things like passionately, like with the right intent and the right intensity, it's on him to change the plan if the plan's not working. And that's really liberating, quite frankly. It's like, well, it's not on me at this point.
You've done everything that you could.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And it sounds like, in terms of input, you just do the work required, as we've been talking about. But your challenge when it comes to contest prep, you said, was getting on stage and not having a repeat experience of your photo shoot. So I'm wondering, contest prep takes months. So throughout those months, as you were getting close to competition, how did you work through that challenge? I'm imagining that you might have started dreading contest, the first competition, thinking, what if I do feel that way again? Because at that point, you had no proof that you wouldn't, right? So how did you work through that mentally?
That's exactly what happened. Um, but it's funny because everyone says that like prep exposes you. It kind of exposes your demons, so to speak. And I was just like sitting around waiting for prep to get hard. I'm not gonna say that like every single day I was like stoked to go to the gym. I mean, I had a couple like low energy days. Hunger never really got too bad for me personally. That was my personal experience. Um, the way that I really like to describe it is like if you gave me a choice, I would prefer not to do cardio. I'd prefer to not go like, and I love to train. I love to go to the gym. So like there were points in prep where like if you gave me a choice and said you don't have to train today, sure, I'd love to sit on my couch and not go. But it never really got that hard. And I don't mean that to sound like, a jerk or anything, but it's just like, but again, then it's like when I can now zoom out and look back on this, I see I now see very clearly, like, first and foremost, my body was like, we did a really good job priming my body for prep. So it was responsive. We didn't have to like dig or push that hard. And, mentally, I'm like very conditioned to do hard things. But again, I felt like I was just sitting around waiting for it to get hard. And I'm like, I actually like masochistically wanted it to get harder. I was like, let's go, let's push, like harder, more. But where I started to really be tested was, I would say, like in the last like 6 weeks or so, like 4 to 6 weeks. I started, it started like it started to get closer to show day because when you have like more distance, you're like 16 weeks out, 12 weeks out, it still feels like this thing that's really far away. And you're just like, I have time. I have time. But then as you like get under that 8 week mark and then you get to like the 6 week mark, it's like, no, I'm going to have to do this. Like, I'm going to have to do this for real now. And you start to think about like the actual stage experience. And I started thinking about like, am I actually going to be ready? And, like I felt like, from a physique perspective, like my anterior was like really shredded, but then my posterior wasn't. I was like, my glutes are not tight. And I don't mean that it wasn't a judgment. It wasn't like a good, bad, like, oh, my physique sucks. Like, no, it wasn't that. It was like, I'm looking at the criteria that I need to meet for this division and I'm not there yet. Now, in retrospect, of course, I'm not supposed to be there. It was like 4 to 6 weeks out. Like, that's not supposed to be ready 6 weeks out. But I was like, am I going to be ready? Like, are my glutes going to come in? Am I going to tighten up? And we were kind of like hitting a couple stalls at that point, which like, so like the wheels are just turning there. Is like, oh crap, now what? And it like snowballed all of these thoughts of like, am I actually going to be ready? Like when it comes time to step on stage. And those thoughts really snowballed into like, ugh, like I don't like, do I really want to do this? Like, this has been all fun and games up until this point, but, and so those thoughts started to resurface of like the photo shoot where like I'm dreading this thing. And once I recognized that pattern and like called myself out, I was like, oh, like this is what people say when they say, this is what they mean when they say prep exposes you. Like, this is my challenge. This is my hard. So someone else might really struggle with hunger, with training motivation or something like this is my hard. Like, here's this same pattern that I've seen repeated in so many different contexts. And here it is again. And when I realized that that was my test and I was being tested, I was like, no, this time is this. I promised myself this time was going to be different. This is where we break the pattern. And so, a really helpful thought process for me, I journal every morning. And I kind of do my own prompts. I kind of free write, like, how am I feeling, like physically, how am I feeling emotionally, like, I don't, it's not really all that guided. I kind of just word dump, so to speak. But something I started really focusing on, and like in my journaling, was I just realized I was so focused on how I didn't want to feel. Like, I don't wanna feel nervous. I don't wanna feel like I felt in that photo shoot. I don't wanna feel unworthy. I don't wanna feel like I'm not feminine. I don't, and I was like, "Whoa, whoa, like, what if we reframe, and what if we start focusing on what do you wanna feel when you step on stage? How do you want to feel? What do you want to project? Like, what do you wanna be? What do you wanna project? What do you wanna feel? Like, what does that actually feel like in your body? What does that feel like in your mind?" And I was very conscious of catching myself when I started to revert to the whole, like, "Oh, what if I feel nervous?" And it's like, "You're chill, you're gonna be nervous." Like, let's not pretend like you are not gonna be you are going to be nervous. You're parading around, like, half naked, like, prancing around stage in a pair of heels and a sparkly bikini, like, you've never done this before. You are going to be nervous, and, like, you know what that feels like in your body, because you've had to, like, sit on stage and play solos and auditions, like, what nerves feel like, and it's silly to think that you're just gonna, like, not feel nervous because you did some mental gymnastics. It's like, no, we need to, like, acknowledge the nerves will be there, probably gonna shake a little bit. However, like, what do I wanna feel in terms of, like, what I project and, like, confidence and energy? Um, and, I even went through, like, early on in my posing practice, I really went through some, like, I'm gonna channel, like, pre-2007 Britney Spears, like, that's gonna be my alter ego. And then I was like, "No." Like, again, no, like, I don't need an alter ego. Like, I'm trying to do this authentically. Um, and I think that was just really the pivot point for me, during that period of testing, that I was able to, like, overcome this, and I was like, "No, like, we're not gonna repeat this. Like, we're gonna pour all of our energy into, like, what we do want to have happen, and I need to take my own advice, and I need to trust my coach to get me there." Why, like, he coaches a bunch of jacked dudes in the really big divisions, winning, like, pro cards and, like, Masters Universe titles, and, like, he knows what he's doing. Like, I'm not, the body's complicated, but, like, this ain't nothing he hasn't seen before. No way. So, trust the plan, trust the process, trust my coach, and, like, I need to spend my time and effort on the things that are gonna matter more. Like, me, like, sitting up at night wringing my hands about, like, if I'm gonna hit a new low tomorrow, or, like, if my glutes are gonna come in. It's like, whatever happens, happens at this point. And, it'll be a learning experience either way for me and my coach, because at the end of the day, it was my first contest prep and my first, like, prep with this coach. So, while he knows a lot of stuff, he's gonna be learning things about my body too. And whatever we do now is really just gonna better inform future preps.
Absolutely. It was really beautiful how you described how you overcame that mental challenge. Thank you for explaining it. Now, you have this superpower, the ability to stay consistent no matter what, that we discussed throughout. I'm wondering if there was ever a time when you channeled it into the wrong outlet. For example, as I alluded to earlier, and my audience knows really well, in my adolescence slash early 20s, for about a decade, I channeled my own ability to be extremely consistent into habits that precipitated and then led to me maintaining a restrictive eating disorder for several years. I'm wondering if anything similar to that, possibly not an eating disorder based on what you said, but something like that, whether that happened to you as well, where you you without realizing took this ability of yours and used it for the wrong purpose, or what you recognize in hindsight was a purpose that wasn't serving you?
I mean, the only thing that really comes to mind is just like misapplying that intensity to the wrong information, so like I did like the lemonade diet once. I don't know if like remember when Beyonce did that?
Oh my gosh, the lemonade diet.
Do you like,
Oh
where
man.
it's like lemon juice, cayenne pepper, and like you basically fast for 14 days? Like I did that because I also thought it like I'm like, this is no big deal. Like I can do anything. And like I did it. So that's like, obviously it wasn't sustainable. It was never meant to be sustainable. Obviously didn't really get me the result. This was way before I knew what I know about nutrition. Do not recommend. But, like those kinds of approaches like would appeal to me because I'm an extreme person. So it's like that I can do that, no problem. I mean, I was a pescatarian for years. So I only ate like seafood. I didn't eat like meat, chicken, anything like that. Um, and like I remember when I was in Hong Kong, I like came up with this strategy where like I'm just not going to eat carbs, and then one day a week I'll have a cheat day. So like those kind of extreme approaches really appealed to me as an extreme person. Um, and I think a lot of people could probably relate to that too. Because we all like what want we want it's so much easier to pursue an extreme than to pursue something with extremeness. And I think that's kind of the missing piece here. It's like more people ascribe to pursuing an extreme because it's easier to wrap the brain around. Like as humans, we are just such like binary creatures. We want like A or B, black or white, one or two. Like it's just like our nature, good or bad. We that's how we sort things in our brain, and we wrap our brain around things, and it's so easy to understand. It's so much harder to be in the gray and understand nuance. Um and so I think, hey, if I know like I'll just like go in this extreme direction and I'll get where I want to go. But of course we all know that that's never really going to end well because it's not sustainable, right? But like what if we took like something that actually wasn't extreme but we pursued it with extremeness? And I think that's what a lot of people are missing. I think a lot of people just have really just like misconceptions about what it is they want from their life in terms of balance and like what balance looks like. And a lot of people who are like missing pieces with their physique, like, hey, why am I not getting the results that I want? Like, it's not because you're lacking balance. Like maybe you do need to go a little harder in one direction for once, but that's not the popular answer.
Yeah, but it's an answer that I can agree with because I was similar to you in that at the time, extreme approaches appealed to me. I think mainly because they were easier to understand.
Yeah.
I was 14 or 15, so being told if you want to lose weight, you eat less and you move more was very simple to understand. And so was the idea that to get to the body that I wanted, I only had to do this one thing: eat less and move more. And I did it, and I achieved weight loss.
Mhm.
But also, in hindsight, I realized it was not the body that I wanted. And it was only later that I began to appreciate actually to get that physique, it's going to take seasons. And there
Mhm.
are going to be seasons where my physique is not going to look like the outcome that I want. For example, a lot of people are afraid of gaining weight if they go into a calorie surplus because they're not going to feel at the most they're not going to feel the most comfortable in their body, without appreciating that the end goal of the calorie surplus is not to get you to your heaviest weight and keep you there. It's to get you to your most muscular your most muscular physique with some extra body fat that inevitably comes along the way. And then when you diet down and you remove that body fat, that's what brings about the physique that's closer to what you want, at least for a lot of people. There are some people that are happy to gain the weight, but that's a limited percentage of the people that I have worked with personally. And but that's nuanced. It's not as easy and simple and straightforward as saying diet for 12 weeks. It takes commitment to say, I'm going to take a year to do, let's say, 8 months in a surplus and 4 months in a calorie deficit. And at the end of that process, my physique will be closer to my ultimate goal. And it takes a lot more faith to stick to 12 months than to stick to 12 weeks, I think. And that's possibly also another reason why these hard and fast approaches appeal to so many people, because you think in only 12 weeks, I'll be able to get the results that I want. And that's far more appealing, to be honest, than to say, well, that's going to take at least 5 to 10 years of heavy lifting and eating in a strategic way.
Yeah, I think like a lot of people love to disparage bodybuilding and talk about like it's extreme, it's disordered. And remember how we were talking earlier in the podcast about like, I really believe it's not so much what you do, it's the intent with which you pursue it. For me, bodybuilding has been so empowering because it has been a vehicle, yes, for personal growth, but like it's granted me the permission to allow my body to move through these different seasons and fluctuate without assigning meaning, like good or bad. Like we as a society like have, interpreted like weight gain in any way as bad. And but the thing is like when you're in a building or growth season, that's not bad. It's good. Like that's what you want. And it's what's necessary. Like it is body building. Like no diet is going to reveal muscle that you never built, and like I said, it really has been so empowering and liberating to grant myself and my body the permission to move through these phases and seasons. And not that anyone needs permission for anything, but I think what I'm getting at here. It's like permission to like not be my leanest 24/7. It's like that's not the point. And a lot of my clients have asked me like, "Oh, how are you? Like, are you nervous about regaining weight? Post season, post show?" No, honestly, no. And I've like been at this long enough. Granted, this was my first time like stepping on stage, but I have receipts. I know I can like lose body fat. I just lost 35 pounds since May. Like I did that. I can do it again. Um, just different. I know you preach the same thing, but just like every every season has a reason. That's so cheesy, but it's true, and I think what more people need is just to stop living in this stranglehold of like I'm just going to walk around looking like a fitness influencer 365 days a year. It's like, dude, just like give yourself the permission to like not be living in that chokehold all the time. Like it is, it is just a miserable way to be. And I'll be the first to say that that doesn't mean we take our hands off the wheel. That doesn't mean like when we're not dieting, it's a free for all. Not at all. I do think people completely misunderestimate how much intention like maintenance and even a surplus done properly really require. I will be the first to say that, but actually giving yourself permission to be in a maintenance phase and be in a surplus and like not be dieting is just so liberating.
Absolutely. And also appreciate that the process is nuanced. And so the purpose of physique development is not to always try to be as lean as possible. And I lost my train of thought, I'm going to be honest here. So now it's coming back to me. I'm like, why did I want to say that? Now I remember. Started with the process is nuanced because one mistake that people make, and I'm not blaming anyone, you don't know what you don't know. And I think social media unfortunately portrays that. This mistake is the idea that you can pursue fat loss and muscle gain to the max at the same time. People are trying to be their leanest while they're trying to be the most amount of muscle possible. The body doesn't work that way. If you try to be your leanest, you are going to take away calories. Calories are energy, are a unit of measurement for energy. Energy is required for the body to have the resources to build muscle. So if you're not at the very least at maintenance calories, and you're not actively pursuing fat loss all the time, you're not going to maximize muscle growth. And again, I'm not blaming anyone. I do believe that what we see on social media is a lot of fitness influencers and fitness models who, for a job, need to stay within walking distance of their leanest physique all year round, but they also built a lot of muscle in years prior. That's why they can stay there and look the way that they do all of the time. Whereas if you haven't built that amount of muscle, you gotta focus on the season, the on one goal at a time. So there's a season where we maximize muscle growth, and then there's a season where we maximize fat loss. And as you said, Natalie, if you pursue each season with extremeness, as opposed to, for example, being really excited and going all in your fat loss phases, and then kind of pussyfooting around a surplus and actually just staying at maintenance for months. And I say that because that's what I did in my first bulk in quotation marks, which was just me being at maintenance and freaking out every 2 weeks if my weight went up a little and bringing my calories back down, or essentially increasing my calories above maintenance. Weight spiked up, and I would bring them down the next week. So essentially, I stayed at maintenance on average over time. So if you, instead of pussyfooting at least one of the two, if not both phases, you actually went all in, like Natalie was saying, you will probably see far better results for your efforts because you are working hard. But just like Natalie and like I did back in the day when I developed the eating disorder, you're working in the wrong direction, and you need to have focus. You need to have nuance, and you need to give yourself permission to be in those phases that society gives you pushback for because they are aligned with your real goals and values, which is something that's really important to me, that I've been thinking about a lot, whereby society has its own standards, but you've got to realize what your own standards for yourself are, and they are not always aligned, which means that you don't need to do what society tells you to do because it is not what's going to get you to the outcome that you want for yourself. But I wonder how many people actually think about what they want for themselves because we are sold fat loss and having the leanest and meanest physique as if it is the one goal that everybody must pursue for some reason.
Yeah, I think it needs to be said too, like, because now I'm the first to admit I will be using my stage photos for the next year. Okay. Because I'm proud of those and I paid for them and I have,
Absolutely.
you
You
will be,
earned the right.
but understand, like, what, not that I'm an influencer by any means, but understand that people are doing that. They're using photos from like when they were their leanest years later. I mean, so like I'm gonna do that, but not to mislead anyone just because like I paid for those photos and I like them and I'm proud of them. But everyone loves to talk about like the contest prep because it is the grit that everyone looks to, like, oh my gosh, that must have been so hard. Like I could never, wow, like how'd you do that? And then of course you get like it helps when you get really gnarly sick result, right? Like you're peeled, shredded, like tan, bronze, like it looks cool. And it makes people ask questions like, whoa, like how long did you take? How long did that take? How did you get there? But I can't not mention the entire 2-year lead up to that. So the theme of this podcast, I think, was really meant to be like, hey, what if pursued things obsessively and extremely? And I brought that approach to my off season. And that we haven't touched on that, but I think that is really important is that I didn't flip a switch when prep hit. Like, I was not really what I would say to the naked eye or to a quote civilian or normal person. I would not have called me balanced in my off season. Like, I got sick a couple times, but apart from that, like, I literally never for like over 2 years, like when I decided I was going to compete and step on stage, I never missed a training session because I just didn't feel like it or because I ran out of time. I missed if I legitimately got sick or like injured or something like that. But like I never just indiscriminately like decided not to go. Not once. I'm not exaggerating. Not once. I couldn't tell you the last time. I mean, I didn't live on a meal plan for 2 years. You know, I definitely like my coach trusted me to do my own macros because I had earned that trust, by the way, to do it responsibly. And of course, I took like meals out. You know, I wasn't like that extreme, but I couldn't tell you the last time that I just like quote lost control around food or just said like F it and like ate whatever. Like there were times I ate quote off plan, but it was a very conscious decision. I was like, I understand this process. I'm going into this with my eyes open and I am choosing to like eat this cookie. I'm in New York City with my family and this bakery has the best chocolate chip cookie. I'm going to have it. But you can make those choices confidently when you've earned the equity with yourself. You know, when you've put the reps in for so long, like when your values are very well defined, it makes decision making easier because you're always making decisions with respect to your values. But my whole point here is like the non-glamorous stuff that no one cares about. Like no one cares about my off season. Like I was literally like 38 pounds up, you know, and like I there was never a day that I went to train where I didn't give it my all and like train with intensity. I never dialed it in. And you know, maybe some of that was motivated by fear, if I'm being honest. You know, again, fear of like stepping on stage and being like, "Oh my god, like what if I'm not ready?" You know, but I think few people pursue anything like that. They just see the end result and think it's that lead up that's like where things got intense. But like no, and I've always said like I will outwork anyone. Like I will do the boring stuff that the quote boring stuff that like no one wants to do. I'll do it. And I'll do it like with bells on. And I wouldn't have had the prep that I had if I didn't have the lead up to the prep that I had.
Absolutely. And in this society that focuses so much on balance in quotation marks, and as you said, calls attitude like an attitude like yours or mine disordered, in this society, the people that are conveying this message would likely call what you do a life full of, in quotation marks again, sacrifices.
Hmm.
I'm wondering if you have ever felt throughout your non competitive and now competitive bodybuilding process like you were missing out, or if in hindsight now you feel like you missed out on anything.
Yeah, I definitely did. I even now sometimes like, you know, it's not like everyone's tested. You'll always be tested, you know? Like even if you are confident in your values, but you know, it happens mostly when I'm like around my family and, you know, I come from a family of big like social drinkers, like, you know, that's just how they unwind. It's like happy hour and like we're having snacks and I mean, those things are delicious. You know, I'm not like void of taste buds. Like, you know, I always say like, you know, I'll never not want Christmas cookies. Of course I do. They're the best. And, you know, it's easy to like see other people like slamming the Christmas cookies and the cocktails and feel a little FOMO of like, I wish I could do that. And then you also have to coach yourself and be like, well, I can do that because I have free will. I can do whatever I want. So there's nothing stopping me. I can like dive headfirst into the tin of cookies. Um, but it's having the presence and wherewithal and self-awareness to stop yourself in the moment and think about, short-term sacrifice, long-term gain, delayed gratification. And then ultimately, and something I always ask my clients is like, you've got to take a look around the room. Are those the results that you want? Like those people that are, slamming the happy hour cocktails and, even like my family, bless them, I love them dearly, but like, do I want what they have in terms of, physique and health? And like, no, no, I don't. But I do remember, I remember one time actually about 3 years ago with this photo shoot prep I was doing. I was actually taking a like calculated maintenance or diet break because I was on a family trip, like at our lake house. And I definitely like very consciously overate on animal crackers. Um, delicious by the way. Um, and it was a conscious decision because I was like consciously rebelling. Like, I was like, oh, like why do I have to be different? Like why do I have to? And I remember that and it didn't make me feel good physically or mentally. But to answer your question, like, yeah. Yeah, like I still get FOMO every now and again. It's not as like extreme, maybe as that one time 3 years ago, or like prior to that, I would get it a lot more. But again, I think back to our conversation about it's not necessarily what you do, it's the intent with which you pursue it. So, if you're always viewing those things as like with a scarcity mindset, like this is all the stuff I can't do. Like this is all the stuff I can't have. Like I can't have the bread basket. I can't have this. I can't do that. Versus reframing it and it's like, but right, like by not having those things because these things are maybe are not goal aligned or like appropriate for whatever season I'm in or goal I'm pursuing. What is that going to get me? Like that's going to get me my goal. So it's not necessarily I'm focused on what I can't have. It's like, what am I gaining? And I think a lot of people, and I mean, myself included, I used to do this and sometimes like can slip into that. And that's where I kind of have to coach myself out of it and be like, right, but what am I getting in return? Not like what I'm missing out on, what I'm losing, but like, what am I getting?
Thank you for your honesty. I agree with that wholeheartedly. It is my own experience. At the end of the day, if one were to look in on how I live my life now, it's not particularly different from when I had an eating disorder. I've certainly dialed down the exercise, but that's because I was over exercising and it was not giving me the results that I wanted.
And you
But
also better, like, give yourself some credit. Like, you
oh,
just have,
thank you.
yeah, you just like are more educated, have more information now.
Absolutely. But when it comes to the day to day, there are still foods that I wouldn't have eaten then and that I choose not to eat now. The difference is that at the time, I would longingly look at that piece of cake that everybody else was having and thinking, why can't I do that? And what motivated me at the time was fear. I was afraid of losing everything that I had gained through weight loss. Now, I don't really look longingly at that cake because I weigh the decision. Do I want that piece of cake? Do I not want that piece of cake? What's going to happen if I eat it and what's going to happen if I don't? And more often than not, I decide now that it's not worth it because it's not aligned with whatever goal I am pursuing. But that's also because I have given myself permission to have the cake. And literally, I have had so many of my old fear foods throughout the years. And I realized when I had them, I tried to eat them very mindfully. I realized I was looking forward to having them so much because I had restricted them. And then I had them. and they were so disappointing. I remember the first time I ate fries after years of not having fries. Fries used to be one of my favorite foods as a kid. And I had them. And I was like, they're just so underwhelming compared to what I had built them up to be in my head. And from that experience, I learned, okay, sometimes I'm going to have fries because it's not like they suck. These particular fries were not very good, but there are McDonald's fries are amazing in
They
comparison.
agree.
For example, McDonald's fries, excellent. These particular fries at that restaurant, no. But the point is, those foods lost the power that they had on me because I had them, and I realized that they weren't all that, and that they weren't always worth the price that they weren't worth what I would get from pursuing my goal instead.
It's also over so fast. Like you
Yes.
build it up in your mind and it's like, "Oh, I can't wait to like have these fries." And it's like literally 5 seconds later it's like, "Okay." Like,
And maybe you're talking to somebody else, because normally when I go to a restaurant, it will be with a friend or with a loved one, a family member. So you're talking to them, you're present in the conversation. So it's not like this is the most mindful experience where every bite you're tasting every single piece of these fries. And they're gone, and you're like, well, I worked so hard to have room in my diet for these 500 calories, and it wasn't even all that. So you start appreciating how much more satisfying it is to keep your diet more satiating for one, more whole foods based, and therefore more satiating versus having to work quite a bit if your calorie budget isn't particularly large at that point in time for this one off experience that isn't even that exciting at the end of the day.
yeah, and like when you like love to train and you are like actually into bodybuilding and you are like so motivated and focused to put on muscle, which we know is hard. It's a slow process, it's a long process, and it's hard. It's like watching paint dry or grass grow. I always say like, you think fat loss is slow? Like try muscle gain. It's so slow, and it's like I just like got so sick of like hoarding calories for a night out, where I wanted to have fries or whatever. And it's like, I really like don't want to starve all day just to have this piece of cake tonight.
Yeah.
And I also like don't want to feel like crap in my training. Like to go in, once you like really experience what it feels like to like train while properly fueled, like I don't ever not want to feel like that when I train. I mean, you do what you have to do, like when you're in prep, like it's just, like there's no getting around it. But that's what the season calls for. But outside of dieting, like I don't want to feel like that. And that was like a really big switch that flipped for me. Was when I put that together, and I was like, I'm just like not willing to compromise my training because my training's like really important. That's what's going to make this whole thing work and make this whole thing fly and make my body look the way I want it to look. Is like I've got to prioritize like my training and fueling for my training and recovering for my training. And so now like 9 times out of 10, it depends on like what the situation calls for, like if I always like to say that, like, if, I was given the opportunity to go to, like, a Michelin starred restaurant in Paris with, like, a wine tasting, like, I'm taking a free meal, and, like, that scale is gonna be up for the next 3 days, and I'm at peace with that decision. But outside of that, I would say, like, 8.5 times out of 10 now, because 'cause I'm putting myself above the 80%. Like, a meal out for me, I'm gonna just try to like find something that works for what I would eat anyway. So if my normal like last meal is gonna be some sort of protein with like rice or potato and veg, and I know like the macro amounts, I know the calorie and protein, like honestly, it's just like worth it to me to keep the rest of my day as is and just find something that kind of works within that constraint, like a piece of fish or chicken with like veg and like a baked potato, depending on where the restaurant is. Like, is it really like that special of, is it really something, but like I feel that I need to try like that Michelin rated restaurant, or is it really just like some like Americana restaurant, like everyone's got a burger, everyone's got a piece of chicken, it's like, how good is it really gonna be? Like,
I have two thoughts on that. The first one is I went through this phase, like you mentioned, where you hoard calories because you learn. It's all
yeah,
about calorie balance. So if I have 300 fewer calories throughout the week, I can add them onto just a one day. I don't regret that phase because
you
it
have
was
to.
necessary, I think,
Yep.
for me after so many years of food restriction to give myself that permission, as you said, to eat those foods that I was so afraid of, while understanding that they wouldn't hurt my progress because that's how science works. And so I don't regret that phase, but much more recently, I have become much less inclined to engage in that kind of calorie cycling. I also used to be far more liberal when with my clients, telling them, "Oh, you want to save calories for this one event? Absolutely." Now I am much more cautious in telling them I would not advise saving more than these many calories from and borrowing these many calories from any one day. Because like you said, Natalie, I realized training is far more important to me, and feeling good every day on average is far more important to me than feeling more tired and less energetic and hungrier on average 6 days a week, just so that I can have this, whatever it may be, on this one day out of the week. And it is far more important to me to go into my leg sessions feeling like I'm going to crash the leg press and not the other way around because I haven't been eating enough. So nowadays, I only ever eat out if I'm going to eat pizza, to be honest. And sometimes I eat out at Asian restaurants because noodles are probably my partner's favorite food,
So
Asian noodles especially. So if we go out together, yeah, I'll get a bowl of noodles with her. But if it's my choice, I only really want to eat out if I eat pizza. And I only really eat a very specific type of pizza because those are the toppings that I enjoy the most. So getting any pizza, getting some, no offense, American style pizza where it's basically, would you like some pizza with that cheese? And I despise cheese. I do not like it at all. I've never liked it throughout my entire life. I do not eat pizza with cheese on it. So that's one of the things. My pizza is always marinara because it's the one that comes without cheese. And then I add chicken, mushrooms, and peppers. Those are my favorite toppings. I always just want pizza like that. I will only eat pizza if it's Napolitan style. So it's the one with the thick crust because I love the dough. That's what I love about pizza. It's the dough. I'm even making the Italian hand gesture that everybody's familiar with, even though this is not a visual podcast. But anyway, the point being, I have now learned that there are only very few eating experiences that for me are worth, for example, saving calories for. So they happen quite infrequently, and I don't engage with them in a stressed way. I'm not stressed over the experience like I would have been in the past. And so this leads on to the next thought, which is when you engage, when you embrace this kind of mindset, I think you end up in enjoying the experiences that you do very carefully select a lot more, because instead of having all food that comes your way just because it's there, you actually put a lot of thought into it. You weigh the pros and cons. You wonder, is this really what I want? Is it worth the fact that it's not exactly aligned with what I would do normally to pursue my goals? And sometimes it is. And when you say, yes, it is, for me, that pizza is worth it. I am going to have that pizza. Whereas another restaurant meal, burger and fries, I could not care less about burger and fries. I could make a better sandwich at home, to be honest with you. When you make those decisions, you end up enjoying the foods that you choose a lot more because you're simply being mindful and you're not just eating the food because it's there. And the rest of the time, you feel like you have the energy to pursue the goals that you want, and you're not stressed those times when you feel like you're deviating, or to an external eye, it would be like you're deviating. Oh, you're eating pizza. I thought you were into bodybuilding. But you know that you're not deviating because you're choosing what's in alignment with your goals at that moment in time.
Yeah, I feel like most people just have like really low standards. Like like you mentioned, like American style pizza. It's like, man, like most people are just cruising through life, not being intentional or aware. And like this topic of like just convenience foods. It's like, really, was it really so enjoyable and that good? Now, it probably tasted pretty decent, so it probably didn't taste bad, but like, was it really that good? And just like accepting this like lower barometer of like taste and experience without a thought as to like, what am I sacrificing for this? For something that really is just so categorically meh. What am I giving up in exchange for that? And like most people just don't have the self-awareness to like have that conversation with themselves.
Yeah, and as I said earlier, some people might say that you or I live a life full of sacrifices, but with the
Mm,
point you just made, what came to me was, isn't it the people who have these low standards, as you mentioned, that end up living a life full of sacrifice? Because when they have all of these convenient foods and they don't pursue the goals that they might have that are not in alignment with those foods, aren't they sacrificing a lot themselves? Because they're sacrificing not getting the physique that they would really want, not feeling as good in their body. And I don't mean because of their appearance, but
right.
purely because of energy levels, having the right amount of nutrients, essential nutrients that we need to thrive, not having brain fog, not feeling sluggish. I feel like they are sacrificing a lot more, and yet society doesn't reward our way of thinking. If anything, as you alluded to earlier, a lot of society would call us disordered because of that,
Hmm.
which is quite interesting to me.
It is, but again, you got to find your tribe, like our little corner of social media and the internet, and we can all hang out together with our meal prep subs, looking jacked and lean and feeling awesome,
And
unless we're
speaking
not
of
at
finding your tribe, oh yeah, true. When in contest prep, not really. Speaking of finding your tribe, and I apologize for interrupting, Natalie, but I feel like I found my tribe with you because at the beginning of the podcast, before we started recording, I said, "Would you have time to go a little bit over?" Now we've gone over by half an hour. I did not plan for that to happen, but I found myself agreeing with so much of what you said that I wanted to respond because I don't know if you resonate with that, if that resonates with you, but personally, I don't often meet people who understand on a deep level or with whom I can have this kind of conversation because I have friends to whom I can speak about it, but I can tell that they don't understand. And right now, I got the impression as we were talking that you could understand me, so I got really enthusiastic about sharing with you, and I thank you for the extra time that you gave.
Absolutely. This was a really enjoyable conversation. I think I started out by saying like I'm a nerd for this stuff. So like it's never work for me to like just talk about it. I'm like passionate about it. I want to know everything there is to know about it. I want to help people. Um so yeah, it's like this flew by for me. So thank you so much for having me again.
Absolutely. And I'm the same. I am such a nerd for bodybuilding, helping other people get to the place that I have gotten to and even further if I can, helping them develop their physique, their outlook on fitness, their outlook on the rest of their life as a result. So this was such a pleasure. I am going to bring it to a close though. I am going to ask you as a final question, where can people find and connect with you and inquire for coaching if they want? And I will put all of the links in the notes to the episode.
Sure, I appreciate that. I am mostly on Instagram. My handle is at Natal Eats Well. Natal Eats was taken. Um, that was like the name of my first business was Natalie Eats. But you can find me on Instagram. I'm super chatty and responsive and engaged there. So anyone who just wants to connect, please do.
Dear listeners, for some reason the recording cut off at the very end, but all I said was thank you for tuning in. So I'm gonna repeat it to you now. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode, and I will talk to you next time. Lastly, if you want to support the podcast and help me reach more people, please leave a 5-star rating or review on any podcast platform that you're using. Thank you very much for listening, and I'll speak to you soon.